You're watching a Basin PBS live town hall on the MISD school bond, live from the Anwar Family Studio. Questions? Ask them via the Basin PBS Facebook page. Made possible with support from Diamondback Energy, Pioneer Natural Resources, and Pro Petro Services.
Thank you for joining us tonight as we are coming to you live from the Anwar Family Studio here at Basin PBS in Midland. I'm Pat Canty, Basin PBS board member, along with Mary Kate Hamilton from CBS 7. We will co-host tonight's program. Tonight, we'll be discussing the 2023 MISD school bond vote. The format of this program is that of a town hall and not of a debate. We would like to remind everyone that this is a live broadcast, so flash photography, making loud noises, or other disruptive actions or comments are not permitted. The goal is to provide information about this bond election, and the views expressed tonight do not necessarily reflect those of this station.
The Midland Independent School District is going to the polls to try and pass a school bond. The last time voters approved a bond issue for the school district was in 2012. In 2019, the school district proposed another school bond for $569 million. After much confusion, the final count came in with 11,800 votes in favor of the bond and 11,826 against the bond. The bond failed by 26 votes, and it took the committee back to the table to come up with a new plan. Well, 4 years later, they feel they have. This year, the voters will vote on a single proposition with a cost of just over $1.4 billion. The bond will include 2 new high schools, 1 new elementary school, improvements to existing schools, and upgrading safety and security. This year's difference: the bond committee is citing a no tax increase if the issue passes. Tonight, we'll hear from the experts on how this bond proposal was created and, if passed, what it will mean for the district's students, teachers, administrators, and infrastructure. We'll hear what's on the ballot and explain how this will affect the community.
Tonight's program would not be possible without the generous support from Diamondback Energy, Pioneer, and Pro Petro. We would like to stress once again that this is not a debate. The program will follow a town hall format in which panelists will present information about the proposed bond issue and answer questions posed them. Now, if you have questions for our panelists, please visit Basin PBS Facebook page, and we'll make every effort to get them answered for you. We have a lot of information to get through, so please help me welcome Evan Thomas, Chief Operating Officer of the Midland Chamber of Commerce, Ashley Osborne, Associate Superintendent for the Midland Independent School District, Austin Beam, Lower 48 Sustainable Development Integration Supervisor with ConocoPhillips, Tina Ortez, a retired school teacher with MISD, and Stan Van Hooser, Director of Operations at Boys and Girls Club of the Permian Basin, and also Chairman of the Pro Bond PAC Energized Midland Schools. Welcome to you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
To get this started, I think before we dive into kind of more specifics with this bond issue, it's been probably, at least 10 years since we passed a previous bond issue. And I just kind of like to throw it out there, maybe start with you, Stan, of kind of why do you think we have had trouble passing bond issues in recent years, and what are the challenges, and also what kind of feedback have you all heard with the committee from these defeats at the polls, and what kind of feedback have you heard, and what have you done to try to kind of meet these challenges in putting forth this current issue?
Thank you, Pat, and thank you, Basin PBS, for having us tonight. That was a lot of information in that question. MISD has traditionally not been a school district, or Midland has not been a community that has passed a lot of bonds. Legacy High School opened up in the fall of 1961. We had Edison Junior High open up in the fall of 65. Goddard opened up in the fall of 67. Abel opened up in the fall of 93. And then in 2012-13, a bond was passed to add 3 new elementary schools to MISD. And back in 2002 Two, they also had a bond election that added some classrooms to Lee High School and Midland High School at the time. But traditionally, Midland has been a very conservative community, and passing bonds has just been something that this community has not been eager to do in the past. The bond in 2019 was brought forth with a proposition to have 3 high schools. And that 3 high school proposition, some of the main objections to that were that the boundaries could not be identified for what those 3 high schools would be. And it was going to build 2 new high schools and renovate what is now Legacy High School. And I think voters wanted to know which citizens were going to get to go to the new schools and which citizens or students were going to end up going to the existing renovated school. And those were some of the issues that ultimately the bond didn't pass. And I hope I answered your question. I forget the rest of it. If there was.
Well, just kind of, yeah. What did
But-
you learn from this
oh.
last bond issue, and kind of how has it affected your strategy and your planning for this one? So.
Sure. One thing we learned was that the three high school model did not pass. I think Midland likes their tradition. They like the traditional 2 high school model, and to keep that. And so that's why in this bond, I was not part of the bond committee, and I'm going to ask Austin to chime in here because he was part of the bond committee that came up with why they went this route.
I think within the bond committee, there was a ton of emphasis on safety and security. That was at the top of our list in terms of priorities. As we talked through, what is it that we want to deliver for our district? We want to make sure that our kids are safe, that they're going to an environment where they can learn and know that they have that safety. And I think as we talked about, particularly the high schools are the biggest piece of this bond. And as we talked about the high schools, I think the emphasis was about making sure that, again, we're allowing every student to benefit from the investment that we make in Midland. And that's one of the things that I love most about where we landed with this bond is it truly does touch every student in Midland. And I think at the end of the day, that's something we as members of the bond planning committee could be really proud of, is that we were able to identify a solution that met some of those. We listened to the feedback that we got from the community. We applied that to the decisions that were made. The participants in the committee, which consisted of more than 100 members, were able to express their views in a way that every perspective was heard and considered through the process. So all of that led us to this place of the conclusion we came to with the proposition that's on the ballot, and I think that's what really stands out to me in how we came there.
I think one of the largest parts of this bond is that you all have cited a no tax increase, but I think a lot of voters are looking for reassurance on that and might be slightly mistrusting of that. So if the bond passes, what is the tax rate and how long will that tax rate stay the same, and how long is it going to take to pay for this bond? Austin, I'm going to ask you to take the lead on this one.
Yeah, so I think stepping back just a moment and talking a bit about school finance is important to explain how this works. There's 2 buckets of funding for school districts. One you can think of as an OpEx budget, the M&O. One is more of a capital investment budget, INS. The money that comes out of INS can only be applied to voter-approved debt. That's the only way we can use that money. But one key distinction between the 2 buckets is that M&O is subject to a statewide program called recapture, which means that our tax revenues in Midland that go into that M&O bucket, some of those are going back to the state, and a significant portion. In this year's budget will be on the order of 30%. The INS dollars, on the other hand, those that will go toward funding the bond, stay 100% in Midland. So I'll start there, and we'll break down kind of how the numbers line up the way that they do so that we're able to accomplish this bond and not see an increase in our tax rate. And the way that happens is, at the state level, we've been afforded with this great opportunity to see M&O tax compression. So, and I'll give some specific numbers with the tax rate just so that people can understand the details. Our tax rate last year was a little over 91 cents. And the tax rate that's set for this year and will be consistent after the bond is passed is 87.7 cents. And the way that we're able to keep the tax rate flat after passing the bond is the changes that were made this year. So you look at the reductions that were applied. And then you look at the change that was made to reallocate some of those dollars into the INS bucket so that we can keep money in Midland. And that was a tremendous opportunity for us as Midlanders because that decision saved Midland taxpayers $33 million in interest. Now, carrying forward into next year, that same amount, so we're going again from 91 cents, a little over, to 87.7 cents, allows us to fund this bond into the future. And so you ask the question about, well, how long is it that way? When you go take out a mortgage on your home, you're essentially getting a fixed payment. You know what that payment is going to be into the future. And right now, we're sitting at a level where we have nearly $50 billion of value in Midland, in the school district. And so with that, at a 0.2175 INS tax rate, that will fund the payments that we would need for this bond. And so into the future, that's not necessarily going to have to increase because you'll see that traditionally valuations have increased, which means that we're going to be able to continue to make that fixed payment over time and not have to see the tax rate increase to accommodate that.
And is that dependent on the INS fund as well?
The INS, or are you talking about the M&O? So the M&O reduction is, the great opportunity there is really to say that the individual taxpayer isn't going to see an increase to their taxes. And very specifically, when you combine the increase in the homestead exemption that we're all hopefully going to vote for as it comes up here soon, either you've already voted for or you're going to vote for it here in the next week or so, what we'll see is the average Midland homeowner is going to see a reduction in their taxes of $52 a month after having passed the bond. So in pass or fail, that's going to be the reality. And into the future, the question has been often asked to us, so what is the difference then if the bond doesn't pass? Mm-hmm. And the part that we're highlighting is that there is a sacrifice. Of course, $1.4 billion doesn't come free, and no one's insinuated that. But what we are saying is, because of the tax relief, we're able to do this and still not have to see a significant sacrifice. So again, you'll save overall $52 per month, and the sacrifice is only $25 per month. So for the average homeowner, you're getting to keep about 2/3 of the tax relief and still fund this tremendous investment in Midland schools.
So, real quick on the tax increase thing. I know there's been some confusion. I know even in Ector County, on the ballot, there's a little disclaimer that says this will result in a tax increase, basically.
Right.
Say something about that. I mean, help clear up there's confusion about that.
Yeah, that's required by statute. You guys may have to correct me. I think it was maybe a 2018 law.
2019. So House Bill 3 specified this language be added on any school bond. And this isn't required for other bonds. Specifically, it is required for school bonds. But it's important to know that the language is there. It doesn't contradict what we're stating regarding the no tax rate increase. Funding a $1.4 billion bond is a commitment. It's a commitment by Midlanders. And that's what that language is indicating, is that you are making a commitment to fund this bond. But the reality is, because of the situation we're in, we get to do that, as I mentioned earlier, and still realize an overall savings for every taxpayer. And again, if you have a homestead in Midland, you're going to see a tremendous amount of savings. Even if you don't, you will see a reduction in taxes. So that's the amazing opportunity that we all see before us with this bond.
So I guess if we could, and go around here, tell us, kind of give us a 30,000 overview of what are the main portions of the bond. What is it going to do? We already know that it's proposing to build 2 new high schools. Tell us, kind of highlight some of the other major portions of that.
Well, I think one of the true key issues in this bond, there is money in there for safety and security. That is on everybody's mind. School districts in Texas know that all too well. We do need to beef up our safety and security at our schools. And so there's money in this bond to do that. Do you want to address another issue there?
Yeah. One thing that I like a lot is we're going to put 9th graders, because in Midland we have 9th grade campuses. So we're going to take those 9th graders, we're going to move them into the high school campuses, and they'll have a real high school experience. They'll also be able to take classes that they're not able to take now because they have to get bused all the way across town. Some of them do take some AP classes. Some of them are there in the afternoon for ROTC or different things that they're involved in. But this will bring them all together in a 9th grade full high school capacity. And then middle schools will have middle schools. Right now our 6th graders are still in primary. So the 6th graders will move up with the 7th, 8th, and 9th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, so they'll be true middle schools getting a true curriculum that they need to be getting. And what's really, really awesome with that is those 6th graders are gone, opens up 1,400 seats for pre-K kids. And the sooner we get these little kids in class, the better they do, just reading and everything else that they may not be getting. And childcare is so expensive, so we get them into school that much earlier. So that whole change of getting the kids where they need to be is amazing.
Mary Kate, I love that you can tell that Tina is a former teacher because those are the areas that are really critical to her. This will also impact the growth in enrollment that we are seeing across our system. So this year, we, as of last Friday, as a matter of fact, we have 28,692 students in Midland ISD schools, and that is an increase of just around 700 students this year alone. And so we are a fast growth district, which many districts across the state cannot say, but Midland ISD is a fast growth district, and so we need to address some of those needs as well.
And I was, just to put that in perspective, I was also I was a principal at Lee Legacy High School. And when I left Legacy High School in June of 2020, the district had just over 26,000 students. And so we've had that much growth in the last 3 years to where we're now at 28.
And we're adding
692.
over 400 students
Yes.
per year projected over the next decade.
You can see that, you can see what 4 years can do, and maybe some time that we wasted not being able to add in new schools and provide more space for these students. And then, all of our schools right now, I think we have 115 portables. And because of the expected growth, if we are able to tackle it with the bond, we can see that number drop down to 38. And if we don't, we see it balloon to 245.
So, if passed, you get two new high schools, build two new high schools. I guess one question is, what are you going to do with the two old high schools? What are the plans?
Go ahead. Who wants to take that one?
Yeah.
I'll speak to it first, and then you all add into there. So currently, the current Legacy High School is slated to become a 5th middle school for the district. The current Midland Freshman High School is slated to become a 6th middle school for the district. Tina spoke to moving our 6th graders off of elementary campuses. And so we would have that true middle school model, and we would have 6 middle schools overall, 6 comprehensive middle schools overall. And then there is a committee that is formed right now that is taking a look at the other 2 facilities that we would have, Midland High School, current Midland High School. There's value there, and the structure is beautiful. So we, thinking about what we would do with that Midland High School is definitely a community decision, and so there is a committee right now that is looking at options to see what it could potentially be, and Legacy Freshman is the same as well.
Yeah, I think I really want to emphasize this has been a more than 2-year effort to arrive at the proposal that's on the table, and the Long Range Facilities Planning Committee that was initially created to assess these issues. One of the priorities was, how do we maximize the existing facilities and infrastructure that we have? And that's why the choices were made that they were. You'll note that the 2 facilities that we're not going to be utilizing had a 50% replacement value to deficiency, or deficiency to replacement value ratio, meaning you would have to invest nearly half the amount it would take to build the thing completely from the ground. And so that tells you that it's really not a great place to invest taxpayer dollars. And so there are, as you mentioned, some great reusable components of those campuses, and we want to make sure we're maximally leveraging those, but they just didn't fit the purpose of either what they're doing now or what they could be doing in the future. And so that's what those committees are going to do, is figure out how do we make most use of those investments.
I think a question some voters have is, of course, how long is this going to take? And then what you do with those over 28,000 students in the meantime. What's the timeline looking like?
Well, the timeline is, if this bond passes this winter, the January, February, they'll break ground on the elementary school. And it takes approximately 18 months to do an elementary school. So the projection is that it would open up in the fall of 2025 for the elementary school. We already have the plans for that. It's going to be very similar to the Yarborough Elementary School that we currently have. So that it's ready to go. For the 2 high schools, that takes about a year of planning for all the intricacies that go into that. And then it will take 3 years to build. So the projection is for those 2 high schools to open up in the fall of 2028. But then we have to refurbish some of the middle schools and Midland freshmen, and refurbish parts of Legacy High School to meet those middle school requirements. So everything to come to fruition would be the fall of 2029. And that's why it is crucial to get this bond done, because every day we wait, that moves further down the line. And those facilities are outdated now. They're overcrowded now, and they're going to be even more so five years from now.
And while those schools are undergoing renovations, will that displace any students?
No, the students will stay where they're at. That's why they won't be moving all the students into middle schools until the fall of 2029, when that takes place. And the middle school students will stay on their campuses where they are until that time.
Yeah, and I think what's great about the way that the program has been laid out, and there's a lot of thought, and I know will continue to be as this is implemented, is there's a lot of thoughtfulness about how do you implement this in a way that it can all be sequentially done and position us for success when we go into those school years where everybody's in their final locations and we've gotten to realize the full benefit of the investment that we're going to make in Midland.
Yeah, by opening up the elementary school in the Lone Star Trails area, that will allow for the students that are currently attending General Franks Elementary to have a neighborhood school. So the students that live in that Lone Star Trails area, it's the northeast part of the city, the students that live there currently bused in to General Franks. And so that will open up that school for those students. It will be a pre-K through 5th grade campus. And so they'll have a true neighborhood school. And then we would do some rezoning to fill General Franks as well.
So, Austin, earlier you mentioned, we pretty much have 2 buckets, funding buckets.
Yes,
you have M&O and INS. Well, one of our Facebook viewers just sent in a question, and it goes like this: how does taking extra funds from M&O to the INS side not affect the M&O?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we talked about the state recapture program. Over the last 10 years, we sent nearly $1 billion from Midland back to the state. And the beautiful thing about it for Midland in particular, because of this excess and because of the way compression is going to work, all those dollars, they don't come out of our M&O, they come out of that recapture. So recapture was actually, prior to compression, was going to be on the order, I think, 42 to 43% of our M&O tax revenue was going to go back to the state this year. Thankfully, because of compression, it's only 30%. But it's just this acknowledgement that that's the delta, is that the dollars that would have otherwise gone to recapture are going to fund that difference. So there's no sacrifice in M&O in terms of what we're doing to pay our teachers and take care of our existing facilities with our maintenance programs and so forth. All of that is remaining the same. The budget was unchanged.
So when you say recapture, it's AKA
Robin Hood. Yeah, when I say that's synonymous.
That's how that comes
absolutely.
into play with this.
Yes.
Okay, good. And one more question as far as the bonds. How long do you anticipate, if passed, how long do you anticipate it would take to pay off the bond?
Yeah, so these are traditionally issued as 30-year bonds, but I think in the history of Midland, they've traditionally paid these off in the mid-20-year range. So there's a lot of interest savings we've realized as Midland taxpayers. Really, even over the last decade, it's on the order of $90 million between defeasements and refinancing of debt that has been saved. And so it's just important to note that the specific terms of the bonds as they're issued, and keep in mind too, all of these bonds won't be issued at one time. They'll be issued in phases to make sure that they're consistent with when we need those dollars. And so that'll happen over several years as the program begins to be executed. And the expectation is that that affords us the opportunity to pay much of this debt off earlier than the full term.
Okay. Thank you.
Much like with houses, the district does go out and look when they have the opportunity to take advantage of a lower interest rate. They do that. And because the district is in good financial shape, we have that AA rating, and with the program through the state, it kicks that up to a AAA rating. So we will have the lowest interest rates available on these bonds going forward.
And I think to that point, it's important to highlight that the district has made very conservative, used very conservative assumptions in all of the numbers that we're seeing. And to your point, we're really going to be able to realize the lowest interest rates available on that bond, those bonds that are issued.
And if passed, will staff needs increase? And if so, where does funding for that come from?
I can speak to staffing. So we currently have an opportunity to really grow our own, and we are doing that work right now. We have talent pipeline efforts in our district where we have para-to-teacher opportunities. We're also looking to partner with an alternative certification program. So individuals in our community that do have a bachelor's degree and would love to impact a child's life could go through an alternative certification program to become a certified teacher. And so we have an opportunity to really look and think strategically about our staffing. Also, with moving the 9th graders to a comprehensive 9th through 12th grade campus, that will offer some efficiencies in staffing as well. So while, of course, we would love to be 100% staffed all the time, right now we have a 96% fill rate for teachers, and we do expect for that to increase, again, with our just really strategic way that we're thinking about growing the folks that are in our community. So again, they'll contribute to our schools, and we know that they already love the community, and so they'll likely stay here as well.
Quick question before we go to the break. Give one example of kind of, you have these needs, right? Give an example or an anecdote of something that's in desperate need of repair, or something that's really not working, or how it affects your everyday teacher. Tina, I think you would be a great person to ask this to, because you're a former educator, you've seen it firsthand.
Right.
Give us some quick examples.
Well, just having more than 2 outlets in a classroom would be amazing. Having space to put desks because teaching and learning is so different now. We don't learn in rows. We put them in circles, you put them in groups, and the furniture just doesn't fit. There's just no, poor kids are just on top of each other. So just having the space and things that work, enough Wi-Fi, enough bandwidth, all because there's so much technology also in teaching. So just having new, big, spacious classrooms that students can learn in, and learning would be so much better, and they would probably enjoy school that much better.
And if I could
Sure.
quickly add
Absolutely.
in, these schools were built in the mid-20th century. The 2 high schools were. To educate kids through the end of the 20th century. We are well into the 21st century. We need schools that fits the 21st century learner and the jobs that they're going to be looking for in the future. Those jobs are not, we don't really know what all those jobs are going to be.
Right.
The world has changed so dramatically due to technology, and our current schools are not able to handle all of those technology needs, and they just weren't designed for the current learning environment of our students.
I'd like to add on to something that Tina mentioned. Another opportunity that we will see if the bond passes is for those 6th graders again to move up to a true middle school model. And so our 6th grade students will have an opportunity to participate in things like beginning band, which other 6th graders across our state already do get to have that opportunity. And unfortunately, our 6th grade students currently do not. Pre-athletics is another opportunity for our sixth grade students as we move into a true middle school model. In addition to vertical alignment, Tina mentioned a little bit of that at the beginning of our time here, but for teachers to plan together in a vertical way, the standards for our middle schools are really written from a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade standpoint so that they can build upon one another, and there's like a continuum of learning, if you will. So that's just another opportunity that if the bond passes, our students and our teachers will be afforded.
Now, we've discussed the 3 new schools. Let's talk about the 3 new locations. Legacy High School would move to south of the Scarborough Sports Complex on trade winds. Midland High School would be built on the Ranchland Golf Course property that MISD does already own, and a new elementary school would be built in the Lone Star Trails area in Northeast Midland, which we've touched on. What kind of infrastructure would need to be built around these new locations to help with the increase of traffic and flow, and are those funds built into this bond? Austin, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, certainly. So when you look at the schools, there is a need around those locations to build out. And there has been budget provided in the total amount of the high school builds to provide what's needed around the schools. So to answer your question very shortly, yes, that was considered and certainly a part of the process. Those sites for the high schools are a little bit over 100 acres each, and on those campuses, we truly get to afford our students every opportunity where today they may be traveling across town and just to get from one thing to the next. We were talking earlier about the freshman schools, and some of our freshman students, they don't get to do the things that they really deserve to get to do as students, and we should be able to afford them the opportunities to go take courses at the high school, but they're having to sacrifice either a first or last period to do that, which means there's a significant amount of travel time in the process, and that's learning opportunity that they're missing out on, extracurriculars that they're missing out on, et cetera.
So it's been said that there's a surplus fund with the district. I've heard some critics of the bond bring this up, and they ask the question, well, why can't you take money from that surplus fund and put it toward this and possibly pay down debt more, or also kind of give you more breathing room with a lower amount? Because they look at that $1.4 billion price tag, and it's something big to swallow. And so
that's understandable, and I think as we mentioned earlier, those of us who've been in this community and been in West Texas for a good part of our lives, we're fiscally conservative, right? And so we like the idea of having a rainy day fund. And a big part of the surplus that's available to our district is its rainy day fund. And it's really intended to be able to accommodate a challenging situation, whatever that might look like. And we certainly don't want our district spending funds that were reserved for something that was unexpected, that keep the district running. Now that still leaves a little bit in that balance, but many of those funds are assigned and dedicated to other things. And so, while I understand the perspective of, hey, we see this bucket of money sitting over there and we want you to go spend that, I think it's a bit unfair when you think about what that's really intended to do.
Well, so you talk about the rainy day aspect of it, but can that money be used for capital projects, or can it only be used for?
So it can be used for those things, but again, it's not to our advantage. Those are expensive dollars to deploy to capital. Right. When you can take, think about it. Every one of those dollars is subject to recapture. And that means that, we're not able to then use those dollars to do things like pay teachers more or take care of our existing facilities with maintenance. So that's the exchange. In any one of these, it's important to realize the limitations force us to do certain things, but we're giving up something when we make a choice to take money out of that fund.
And the district was able to pay during the pandemic when the schools weren't, when teachers weren't actually coming to school and working, they were able to pay those the staff through those funds. And so it looks like money setting out there that, oh, we need to use this money, but as Austin said, those are expensive dollars, and that's what bonds are for, to do that.
Yeah, and I'll just highlight, and you mentioned it earlier, but important to also just note, our district is the highest first rating from TEA, which is a financial integrity rating, and just really says that the district's doing everything right in terms of managing their money, and you can go look at those reports, and they put that out and make that visible to the community. It's something that I think is really important for us to know how those dollars are being spent, and I appreciate that the district provides that information for all Midlanders to see.
Critics have also said, why are we pouring money into infrastructure when we should be pouring money into student success, student outcome? The district does have a B rating from TEA for students and staff, but how, in y'all's opinions, and Tina and Ashley, you may have a good perspective on this, does infrastructure affect student outcome and student success?
Well,
Stan? Absolutely.
As a former principal
Right.
in the district, I can tell you that I taught in MISD through the late 90s, and then I moved to the Metroplex, and I went to a brand new high school, Hebron High School in the Louisville School District, and then I came back out here in 2015. But buildings, yes, buildings don't improve academics, but they're a tool to be used to improve academics. Through this bond, by putting the ninth graders and allowing the ninth graders to have full access to the curriculum of a ninth grade student, part of that rating also comes through your CCMR, which is College Career Ready, Military Readiness. And part of that is how many of our kids are on track to complete a full CTE, Career Technology Education track. And right now, with our ninth graders not being on the high school campus, they are limited to the tracks that they can take or be a part of. And so I see that as a benefit for improving academics. And also just having those students on the campus with the other high school students, they see the value of graduating. They currently don't see students graduating or students not graduating. And so that is although that is not a direct impact on academics, it is a direct impact on how those students feel about graduation and school. Research shows that overcrowding is one of the leading causes of absenteeism for students and teachers. We can't teach the kids if they're not at school. And so getting them at school, if they have a good environment to come to, they're going to be more likely to come there. Research also shows that early intervention is a key to long-term academic success. And opening up these seats, those 1,400 pre-K seats in the elementary schools, is going to go a long way to improving, giving those kids a better opportunity to have academic success down the road. So yes, a building in its own is not necessarily going to improve academics, but it's a tool that the district can use along with the other plan that MISD has to enhance academics as we move along.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you know, there's this philosophy out there that, you know, if you grant or if you approve this bond, then you lose leverage on the school district whenever it comes to trying to accomplish those academic outcomes. I don't think that we need to look at it that way, and I would encourage people to not look at it that way because, you know, we have elections for school board members. That's leverage that you have over them. They have leverage over the staff. You have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. You know, like Stan was pointing out, we have these buildings that are over capacity. It's more of a detriment to learning outcomes than anything, and so, you know, we don't need that attitude to cause us to not want to invest in our school district.
Yeah, that's a great build, and I think the other thing I'll add is just that, you know, there's two things. So one is, any dollar we don't spend, you know, acknowledge that the existing maintenance issues and the problems that we're having with the buildings, they're still going to have to be addressed. And that just means they're going to come out of our M&O dollars. So I just go back to the point that the trade-offs are still going to be there and the need's still going to be there. Mm-hmm. If we don't address it with this bond, our teachers, our administrators, they're going to come up with solutions, but they're going to be more expensive solutions. They're going to be less efficient solutions. And so just keep that in mind. And then the other piece I'll add, and I think, Evan, you could probably add some more to this too, but, you know, think about what we want Midland to be. And think about, we want it to be a destination. I want it to be a destination. I want to see people want to come here and want to live here. And I think that's something else that we need to consider when we talk about the quality of the buildings that we have currently. I mean, that's something that I know many of the employees that potentially work for our company look at and they say, man, I don't know if I want to bring my kids to Midland and them to go to that school. Right. And yes, they're looking at the ratings as well. But I think we have to equip our administrators and our teachers with all the tools they need to be successful, and then encourage and hold them accountable to being successful. And I love that Dr. Howard and her team have really good plans that they've put together. The strategic plan that they published is a fantastic one. They're raising the bar for educational outcomes and expectations in Midland. And I fully expect that they're going to hold each other and this community accountable to achieving those.
Yeah, at the Chamber, our members, we hear from them all the time about how our school facilities are problematic for not only recruiting a skilled workforce and a talented workforce, but even retaining Midlanders in town. And so we really need to, there's a lot of really good things happening around town. You see it in the news with the preserve and the zoo and downtown, revitalization. We need to do the same with our schools. It's going to be a real driver, real economic driver. It'll motivate people to stay. We have a 2.8% unemployment rate. This is a place where you can come and you can work and you can prosper your family. And so whenever we are hearing from our employers, that's one thing that they're sharing. Plus, the age of our community is getting younger and younger. We're 32 years old on average. So school districts to young families, people that are starting their families or already have them, that's really vital whenever they're considering where they're going to stay and where they're going to work and live.
Ashley, I know that MISD has been giving tours, actually, of your existing schools to try to get voters on board. If anyone's watching that hasn't had an opportunity to do that, walk us through the kinds of things that you would see walking through the hallways of, say, Legacy High School or Midland High School.
So the first thing, whenever you go to Legacy High School and you walk up to the front doors, you do have to be buzzed in. But there is not a secure vestibule beyond that. So you have to walk a number of steps to enter the office area and sign in. And so that would be addressed with this bond package. In addition to that, Tina hit on, she was a teacher at what was then Lee High School. So she addressed the classroom, the space, as well as the lack of some of the infrastructure that is needed to power a school that is in the 21st century. In addition to that, the improvements to aging facilities that is also within this bond package will go to the mechanical, the electrical, and the plumbing that aren't always that exciting to look at, but they're absolutely needed in our schools to be efficient and to make it a place where our students want to come and learn every day. I did want to add on to something that Austin mentioned. We do have a strategic plan, a new strategic plan for our district, so we are addressing our student academic outcomes right now. We are certainly not waiting to see if a bond passes or does not pass. We are doing that work right now. We have aligned our system to have consistent curriculum resources. We've brought back curriculum and content experts so that teachers on our campuses know and have someone that they can call when they have a curriculum or a content question. We also have introduced a phonics-based model for our primary students because we know that we have some work to do in terms of literacy. And so we are doing that work right now, and we know that that work will continue if the bond passes as well.
And I'd just like to say I have great confidence in Dr. Howard and her team because they have brought back phonics. Learning how to read is so important, and there's so many teachers out there that would say, these kids can't read, they're in third grade. So just a consistency through the district with teachers, and students can go from one school to the other if they have to transfer for whatever reason. They're right on track. I mean, they come in and teachers have even said now, well, I'm getting kids and they're exactly where we are. Everybody's kind of at the same spot, so they're not having to redo or reteach things. So Dr. Howard's working really, really hard, and I have full confidence in her team and doing what they're going to do because they will raise our grades.
And I believe our district can improve academics as well as build new buildings at the same time. It's not that we have to do one before we do the other.
Exactly.
what better way to show our kids that we value them? We're improving academics through the strategic plan, and then we also have invested in them and in the community for the schools that they'll be able to attend as they move along through the school system.
Very simply, Stan, if we're asking the best of them, it only makes sense that we provide them the best. You know, in reflecting on your question, something that I'll add, you look at Midland High School, and you think about the age of the school and when it was built, and it's been a school that's been built onto several times, but portions of it date back to the 20s. Structures are still made of wood. When you talk about going through the hallways, it's a hallway that was built for a community that was significantly smaller than we are today. And so that was one of the most striking things to me, talking to some of the students who brave those hallways today. And they talked about how challenging it is. I mean, it just, you know, they felt anxiety going into the hallway in between classes, traveling, because they weren't built for the capacity. Even if you start to see that they have the classroom capacity, because there were additions that were made, right? But you travel the same hallways to get between the common spaces, the cafeterias, the libraries. All of those things are not built for the student capacities that those schools are intended to support.
So we had another Facebook question just a little while ago, and it kind of goes back to you, Austin, and all of you, but it's, why not a third high school?
Sure.
I mean, is it just because, well, we got tired of being told no, or because, I mean,
No,
you know.
I mean, you do need to listen to voters, right? And voters in 2019, when that option was proposed, did say no. So I think that's a starting place. We talked earlier, and Stan gave some details around the history in this community of the two high schools and the pride that many Midlanders take in that. And I think that was an important consideration as we thought about it. And you look at what the needs are. At the end of the day, if you build a third high school, you're not going to build 3 brand new schools. So, you know, the proposal in 2019 was kind of the best option we could do with 3 schools, where you were building 2 new ones and you were renovating one. Inevitably, that meant somebody was going to get an inferior option versus others. And I think that's one of the things I love about this bond. Nearly every student in Midland ISD is going to benefit. I mean, every student will benefit, but nearly every student will go to these new high schools. And that means that you're not going to have to worry, well, am I living on the right side of town to make sure that my kid gets to go to the new school and get all access to all the new resources? Because I guarantee you, if there's a new school, and I love our teachers, but I guarantee if there's a new school, that's the one they're going to want to be at, right? And so, you know, you're going to have our best teachers competing to try to get into those schools. But if we give everybody the same resources, then we're going to see that everybody gets to benefit from those. And I think that was one of the big emphasis when you look at why 2 high schools, because that's the way to make sure that all Midlanders benefit from this big investment. And it is a big investment, I fully acknowledge that we're going to make into Midland. And we're going to see a much greater payoff, I believe that firmly, than the investment that we make.
In addition to that, also adding in, you mentioned staffing. So when we think of staffing a third high school, and you think of some of the courses that our students take at a comprehensive high school, what comes to mind for me is AP Calculus. An AP Calculus teacher. They're not just kicking down our door, you know, to come teach AP Calculus for us. And so it would be increasingly difficult to staff a third high school with some of those courses that require a teacher that's credentialed and has that expertise. So that's just another reason why.
Well, and not even your AP teachers, you're talking about your CTE teachers. It's difficult out here to find those experts in those CTE classes as it is, and getting staffing a third high school. If the third high school were a 6A high school, that the projections show that it would still be a 6A high school, you're looking at 130 employees basically with a staff of 180, finding additional counselors, finding additional APs, principals.
And a lot of specializations, like
specializations.
You said.
French,
Yeah,
German.
That CTE, career and technical education, is so important. If we want to enable a future workforce in Midland, that's a critical thing, and these schools really enable that. I think some of the numbers of some of the existing CTE programs that we have, we're having to reject on the order of 2/3 of the students who want to be involved, just simply because we don't have the space.
So say more on how this bond issue would bolster CTE.
Yeah, so there's going to be spaces on the campuses for specific CTE programs, but the district continues to partner with Midland College and enable those opportunities. So there's a nice bridge between the two, and that was one of the big discussions as we talked about, well, how much of those facilities do you afford on the campuses versus keeping in a common location?
Right.
And I think that will evolve over time. But it's really important to note that there was a lot of consideration around how do we maximally leverage those specialized teachers and resources. And so some you might want to centralize, some that we have offerings, but the new schools have very specific CTE offerings that I think are going to be really, really valuable to our students in the future of our community.
So the idea is you retain your teachers from your existing high schools, and then obviously with class size needs and increasing population, you would still have to add, but you wouldn't have to add a staff of 180,
Yes.
essentially.
Right.
Yes. And you have teachers, if they have a nice school with all of the modern amenities, so they're more, retention, teacher retention is higher. And again, back to the CTE, that is just so important. There's additional classes that are designed for those CTE classes. Now we find any open room we can and then try to fill it in with programming or robotics or classes like that. But we would have classes designed to really outfit those type of CTE programs that we have on our campuses. And we do have some great partnerships with Midland College, with our nursing, with our firefighting, with our petroleum, where kids can go on and get certifications where they're very hireable as soon as they come out of high school because they have those certifications in welding and auto mechanics. It doesn't make sense for us to build an auto mechanics class when we have one available to us through Midland College. And that's a great partnership that our kids have.
That's a great point. In looking at what courses and what facility needs on the two comprehensive high schools, we did take into consideration our career and technical classes. And so the introductory courses would be on those comprehensive high schools, and then the more advanced courses where we would need the heavy machinery would be on with our partnership with Midland College. As a matter of fact, Midland College had representation on the bond planning committee.
Evan, you already kind of touched on a question that was asked by another Facebook viewer about how passing this bond or not passing it would affect local businesses and economic growth. I'd kind of like, you probably hear a lot of pros and cons from depending on the businesses you talk to. What are some of the criticisms you've heard from people about this bond issue, and what has your response been?
Well, we definitely are hearing more. We are hearing more pros from the business community more than anything. And I'm talking about employers that are really trying to find people and bring people in. And I'll get to that. But our board of directors endorsed it unanimously, except for some that had to abstain from voting for the chamber. And they're not just oil and gas folks. They're across many industries. And then whenever it relates to oil and gas, I participated in an event at the beginning of October that was ran by the 7 biggest companies in Midland, and they are fully backing the bond. I mean, they know that they need it. The criticisms that we're hearing are many that we've discussed tonight. Ranchland is an issue for green spaces, but that space is owned by Midland ISD, and it needs to be utilized that way. But mostly whenever it comes from a business perspective, you're looking at really large support.
We are winding down on time, but we want to get to one last Facebook question. How does the bond address the needs of our special needs community here in Midland? Ashley, you're probably the best to answer this.
Sure. So again, in the facilities, we do have students that have specialized needs that we educate every single day. And so that was a consideration within the facilities. And so we will have spaces for our most fragile learners. So they will have and be in an area that can really address this very specific needs that they have. So that is addressed within the new facilities.
And the space issue, they'd have better classrooms and space to fit all of the special needs kids and all the activities that they do. They need aids, and so that would just be completely better because of the space.
And I don't have the numbers in front of me, and I apologize, but there is a breakdown on the numbers of classrooms. And it's a substantial increase of the numbers that we currently have. It is a struggle on campuses to find classrooms because they do have to have specific items for those special need kids. But the new buildings will be designed to fit that need.
And the detailed comparisons are available out on the Midland ISD's bond website, so definitely encourage people who are watching this to go take a look and look at those details, inform yourself as you go out to vote. And it's so critical that everybody in Midland get out to vote. And so I just encourage people to do that as well.
Thank you very much. Well, that's all the time we have tonight. I'd like to thank our panelists, Evan Thomas, Ashley Osborne, Austin Beam, Tina Ortez, and Stan Van Hooser for joining us tonight. Now, early voting has already begun and will close on Friday, November 3rd. Voting will take place on Tuesday, November 7th. We would also like to thank once again our sponsors of tonight's event, Diamondback Energy, Pioneer, and ProPetro. Again, we could not have done this without their generous support. A special thanks to the Basin PBS board and staff, along with the Elizabeth Reed Yeager family and the Anwar family for their continued support. And of course, you know, we can never thank our loyal supporters enough. Our members and all our viewers, you're simply wonderful. Now, if you'd like to become a member and you're not, you know, all you have to do is visit us at our website, basinpbs.org. Thank you for joining us. I'm Pat Canty, along with my co-host, Mary Kate Hamilton. Good night.